Good evening, everyone. I know Andrew and I presented at the Black Swamp meeting back in the fall time, but we'd like to share with all of you tonight our experience that we had last summer. And for those of you that have heard this talk before, we can update you because Andrew actually has started the process of venom therapy, so we can kind of update you with that at the end if you have questions regarding that. I'm a pediatric nurse. I've been a pediatric nurse for about 40 years. I've worked both in the hospital setting, in peds ICU, and I'm currently, the last 23 years, I've been a school nurse. So I certainly have taken care of many children with both bee sting allergies as well as food allergies, but I really was not prepared for my husband having allergic reaction last summer. So that's kind of what we'd like to share with you tonight, going through that experience and share with you information that specifically about bee sting allergies.
I wasn't prepared either.
To start off with, when I say we're going to talk tonight primarily about honeybee allergy, but an individual could have an allergy to other types of insects. They could be allergic to all of the insects that I mentioned, or just one or some of them. Primarily, it would be a honeybee, a wasp, a hornet, or fire ants that people will develop an allergic reaction to. In Andrew's case, as he's gone through testing, he is specifically allergic to honeybees.
So I can keep wasps or fire ants, but just not honeybees.
I think you need this one up a little bit. When you have a bee sting reaction, you could have, and we're going to go through each of these specifically. You could have a minor reaction. You could have a moderate reaction. Both the minor and the moderate are considered localized reactions. And then thirdly, and we're going to talk really in depth about this one, you could have a severe reaction or go into anaphylaxis. And that's when your whole body will react and you'll have a systemic reaction. There are factors that come in play with how severe or what type of reaction you can have. And those include, you could have, it's based on the location of your bee sting, the type of insect, like I already mentioned, the number of stings that you have, also your predisposition. I have a predisposition that I have only had localized reactions, but I have always reacted quite greatly to a bee sting allergy. You know that I have been stung when I'm stung. And another factor is your age. So the very young and those that are elderly tend to have a higher reaction to bee stings.
So that obviously doesn't apply to me.
So I have just a couple pictures to show what I mean by it depends on different factors, one being where you get stung. So if you get stung in an area like the hand, it's in a more confined area, and so the swelling tends to become more prominent just because it is kind of stuck in that designated area. I have another slide or picture of somebody that got stung in the lip, And it's quite striking, but it's because there isn't a whole lot of space for that swelling to go. So it's kind of there. I actually got stung in the lip about 3 weeks ago, and I looked very much like that.
She was pouting.
The other things that can happen, or that factors in, is having multiple bee stings. And some of the symptoms that you can have with multiple bee stings is a headache, vertigo, or you feel like you're spinning around, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. You can even have convulsions. You can develop a fever, and you can also have dizziness and fainting. So the more stings you have, obviously it makes sense that the greater the reaction, because you have more venom in your body. Sometimes you can have, with multiple bee stings, your reaction, even though it's a localized reaction, this is hard to explain. It's greater than a localized reaction, but it's not a true allergy. But it can be almost as severe and similar to having a bee sting allergy when you have multiple bee stings. So you might have to seek care, in the event that you have multiple bee stings. So all of us have had, I'm sure all of us have had at least one bee sting in our care of the bees. With a minor reaction, it looks very much like this picture. You'll have an instant sharp burning pain at the site, and then it'll be followed by, it'll look pale around the area, and you'll have a red welt, and you have a little bit of swelling at the site. That usually lasts, 24 hours, 2 days at the most. Putting a little ice on it will help decrease the symptoms a little bit. Then we go on to a moderate reaction. This actually was a bee sting. This was one bee sting that I had. Sorry for the picture, but that's my lower leg. But that's what I look like when I have a bee sting. So, it gets swollen, good 3, 4 or more inches out. Gets pretty reddened and enlarged. And sometimes this can take up to 10 days to resolve. Again, ice can help. But if you have this amount of reaction over and over again, it's probably a good idea to check with your doctor. It's not an allergy because it really is truly localized to that area. But you do want to check with your doctor and see if they have any suggestions of how to minimize the symptoms. Sometimes Benadryl or antihistamine will help. This is another example of a moderate type reaction that's still localized. So this person isn't experiencing any systemic problems at all. And then we're going to talk about a severe reaction. This is the type of reaction that Andrew had last summer. To give you a little background, I've had some health issues for the last year and I'm the primary beekeeper. Andrew's taken a Jamie's beginner course, so he has some basics, but he definitely is my helper. And he's a very good assistant, but I had surgery and couldn't do any lifting, and so he went out to, I actually got my bee suit on, which was kind of against doctor's orders, but got my bee suit on anyways and went out to the apiary with him as he was doing some bee work. And he was actually taking, I think I had some apiary and he was removing them And so I was directing him how to do that. And so because he was, what he was doing, he didn't have his regular gloves on. He had a pair of disposable gloves on. And the bees got very angry, and
Only because you made me do more than you wanted.
and the bees got angry, and he got stung 5 or 6 times in the hand. And he had been stung before. I mean, this is my 5th year as a beekeeper, so he definitely has been out helping me a number of times and has been stung without having any reaction at all. Like he doesn't even have a minor reaction. You can hardly, in the past, you couldn't even hardly tell that he had been stung before. But this particular time, he got stung, and I knew that he got stung. And he continued on his work, and then all of a sudden he looked up and he said, "You probably don't want to know this, but my mouth feels numb." And I know my husband well enough that he probably had a lot more. I knew that he probably had a lot more going on than even that, because he doesn't tell me very much when he's sick. And so I was probably a better beekeeper at this point than a nurse, because my initial reaction was not, like asking him other symptoms that he was having. My initial reaction was, well, can you get the beehive back together? So he put the beehive back together, which took about 20 seconds, and then we headed back to the house. Our apiary at our house is maybe 75 feet away. It's not far. It's just a little walk through the backyard into the house. And by the time we got inside, he was not only numb, but he was starting to have trouble speaking. I mean, his tongue was swelling up. Thank goodness we have a daughter who has a bee allergy, and so we keep an epi-pen in the house for that reason. So I did have access to an epi-pen, and
she stabbed me.
And then we can go in further, but he definitely had a very severe reaction. A severe reaction is systemic in nature, and what I mean by that is, as I had shown you the pictures for the minor and the moderate reaction, it's just localized to one area. In a systemic reaction, your entire body will react. And so the symptoms that I will talk about or list really encompass your whole body. It is potentially life-threatening. In Andrew's case, it definitely was, and it does require emergency treatment. I can't stress to you enough how quickly it all happened. That's the scary part, and it all was kind of matter of fact, and I think I just reacted as a nurse, like in the moment, but in thinking about it later, it just happened so fast, and I was surprised because he was one that I wouldn't have thought at all would have had a life-threatening reaction. It would have been me, who has had moderate reactions before, that I would have thought, it being possible. But for him, it was like out of the blue that it had happened. And thank goodness, I was there, and, we were able to get treatment for him right away. So this is a picture of an infant. This is, if you can't tell, this, you can kind of see that it's a lot more than what that moderate reaction look like? And if we saw a picture of this whole infant, the whole infant, body would look like this. Hives or, like the vascular system is definitely compromised in this picture. Okay, so this is where it gets a little confusing because when your body starts having a systemic reaction, you can have both minor or a minimum systemic reaction, and you can have more severe. So these are the minor ones. So you can get a itchy or runny nose and sneezing. You can have an itchy mouth. You can have a few hives and mild nausea and discomfort. The part that I want to stress, though, is don't negate or minimize the fact that if you start having these systemic type reactions, because even though it might not, you might think, oh, it's not a big deal, I have a few hives or I have an itchy mouth. What you have to realize is that those things can develop into a more major or severe reaction. So you have to be very careful and watchful. For those of you who might have had a bee sting in the past and had some of these systemic reactions but never developed into anything further, it's probably a good idea to mention it to your doctor and for them to do a little bit of testing, because for those of you who, for individuals who have, once you have a systemic reaction to a bee sting, there's a 30 to 60% chance that you will have as severe or a more severe reaction the next time you get stung. So it's not anything to like play around with, because like I said, it can develop into a life-threatening situation very quickly. When in doubt, you really want to call 911, even with a more minor systemic reaction. If you're not sure how severe it is, there's nothing wrong with calling 911 and getting some assistance. And then these are the more severe reactions. You can have a skin reaction where you develop hives all over. You'll get very itchy. Your body can become very flushed or reddened. Your entire body becomes very flushed. You can have lung reactions where you'll get shortness of breath, wheezing, or repetitive cough. So you'll have trouble breathing. Your heart can have involvement too. And you'll see evidence of this with getting very pale. In Andrew's case, by the time we got from the backyard inside, he was as white as a white sheet or paper. He was really, really, really pale and did have a bluish kind of cast or tone to his skin. You can become very faint. That's also in your heart type symptoms. You can develop a weak or rapid pulse and become very dizzy. Your throat, you can have a hoarse throat or very tight, feeling very tight. You can have trouble breathing, talking, and swallowing. And that's just with the swelling that is occurring in your throat. And your mouth, you can have such significant swelling that your tongue will swell up, your lips can swell up. Gastrointestinal symptoms can include nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Another feeling, and it's hard to describe, but it's kind of like a feeling of doom, or you think something really, really terrible is happening. You can get very anxious and confused. And like I said, 30 to 60% chance if you've had a life-threatening reaction once or a systemic reaction once, that it will be as bad, if not worse, the next time. Anaphylaxis is a term that's used kind of interchangeably with a systemic reaction. Anaphylaxis is really just encompasses all of those symptoms that I talked about, and it is potentially life-threatening, and you do want to react right away to that. It is a threat to life.
Okay, but that's not me. So that's just,
Andrew always clarifies when we show that picture that that was not a picture of him. For some reason, he doesn't want people to think that is his physique, I guess.
it just kind of look like that. But.
Again, a severe reaction is a medical emergency. In Andrew's case, by the time we got inside, we both had our bee suits on, so if you can imagine us trying to rip off our bee suits, and I directed him to a corner cabinet where I knew the Benadryl was, while I was getting the phone to call 911 and to grab the epi-pen.
There was no Benadryl in the cabinet.
Yes, we joke about this now, but he was fumbling around because he was not feeling well, and here I was directing him to do something. He was a little confused, and he was trying to talk to me, and I couldn't understand him because his tongue was so swollen. But he couldn't find the Benadryl because he was looking for a box that said Benadryl on it, and it was like the generic name for it that he couldn't find the Benadryl. So I found the epi-pen, got my phone. I called 911 before I gave him the epi-pen and helped him get the Benadryl. And I wasn't sure he was even going to be able to swallow it, but he was able to swallow the epi-pen or the Benadryl. I gave him the epi-pen, and then I was afraid he was going to faint. So I sat him down in a chair in our kitchen, and then waited for the EMS to arrive. I indicated that if you don't get anything from this talk, at least, I guess I would really want to stress the importance of having some tools available to you if you get into a situation that you start having a reaction. Andrew was the last person that I would have thought to have developed a bee sting allergy. He's not an allergic type person. He's never had a reaction in the past and has been stung multiple times in the past. And all of a sudden, you know, he has a life-threatening reaction that, you know, occurred over a 2-minute period, where if he wouldn't have gotten the epi-pen within those 2 minutes, I'm not sure he would be sitting here next to me today. I mean, that's how quickly it happened. In the past, I know many of you, if you're like me, I never thought twice about going out to my beehives by myself. Rarely did I have a phone with me, or, you know, rarely did I have anyone around within earshot. And I think twice about that anymore, minimally to have a phone with you so that you can call for help if you need that. I usually, not all the time, but if I can at all do this, I have someone within earshot of me when I go out to an apiary now, just in case, you know, something would happen. There are some lifestyle changes that have to occur or should occur once you develop or know that you have a bee sting allergy. Certainly you want to limit your exposure to stinging insects. You always should have emergency medicine available to you. So Andrew carries an epi-pen with him all the time, and antihistamine. you should wear a medical alert, and Andrew is showing you his medical alert bracelet. And you should be referred to an allergist, which Andrew did start going to an allergist starting in the fall time, and went through a series of testing. And then lastly, you should consider having allergy shots or immunotherapy, which another term is venom therapy. And Andrew started that. He was actually supposed to start his therapy right around the time that we started with all this COVID business. So he had to put that on halt for a little bit, but he's in his second week of having immunotherapy. He's kind of going through
an accelerated program. I've had 14 injections in the last 8 days.
So the good news, the bad news is that he has to be, have so many shots, which doesn't sound like much fun. But the success is close to 100% having venom therapy or immunotherapy. And so, after he is finished and is at a maintenance dose, which I think he'll go in on maintenance level, I think it's every 6 to 8 weeks, he'll have to have one shot, that frequently for the remainder of his life then, or the remainder of the time that he wants to be around bees anyways. But after that, he can safely be out at the apiary with me and help me once again, which I am looking forward to.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Therese, we had a couple questions were sent in, and I kind of went over them a little bit, but Tammy, the brand new beekeeper this year, she asked if a minor systemic reaction start, would you recommend still using the epi-pen right away? And I kind of told her epi-pens are hard to come by. And if it's minor, it's probably not
Yeah,
epi-pen.
you probably, yeah, you can't, unfortunately, you have to have a doctor's order to have an epi-pen. You can't just go out and buy or obtain an epi-pen just in case. So your first, for the typical person, Andrew was lucky that we just happened to have an epi-pen here at home, and that I knew how to give it. But for a typical person, that experiences a reaction for the first time, if you have a systemic reaction, I would be inclined to say call 911. And if you just have, if you have 2 or 3 of those minor symptoms, I would say yes, go ahead and call 911. Quite honestly, I'm not sure from if you had just a couple hives, I don't know that I would really call 911. There would be nothing wrong with it. It's just, I can't see the typical person calling 911 for a couple hives.
What I would say, if you have more than just a localized reaction, even if it's a minor systemic, you definitely want to talk to your physician. You probably want to get a prescription for an epi-pen or an IBQ, because if you have that kind of reaction, the next one could be a severe.
Remember, I said 30 to 60% chance that you will have as much of a reaction, if not more, the next time. So it might be kind of your indicator that you're building up to having a possible really severe reaction.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave Gallagher here. A couple of things. One, earlier in the spring, I was able to get an epi-pen, and I went to my physician, and I explained to him that my 5-year-old grandson is next door, and my apiary that is not at my home has an 80-year-old man there living there. And I told him, I said, look, I want an epi-pen, because if either one of those people gets stung, their potential could have a severe reaction. He wrote it up, and I was able to get it, no questions asked, from the insurance company. The other thing I will say that when in doubt, make the phone call.
Yes.
And I used to be on the volunteer fire department, and we would rather have people call us and get there and have just a minor problem that we can write a piece of paper for and leave. But by the time you realize that you're in trouble, it cuts down, it just cuts your response time in just tremendously. So if you're worried about it, make a phone call, 911. You might be a little embarrassed, but they'll be good about it. I guarantee it. They won't be upset. And you'll have the peace of mind knowing that you've got the cavalry on the way just in case things go bad.
I think James had also said, don't try and go to the hospital, just call 911 to come.
Yeah, because I think you can pass out, and like my wife, you know, her blood pressure, she was ready to pass out because her blood pressure lowered. Another person, Therese, want to know, do you take antihistamines when you get stung? And do you want to go over the antihistamine a little bit?
I mean, if for a minor reaction, you can. For a more severe reaction, the antihistamine acts differently. I mean, it can be helpful, but it's not going to alleviate or take care of a life-threatening reaction. You want to take both if you have a severe reaction. And quite honestly, the epi-pen is the important thing. I mean, if you have a choice between one or the other, you want to give the epi-pen. The epi-pen is the life-saving medication. You know, and to back up for an instance where you just have a couple minor systemic reactions, I've been in a school setting a couple times where a child came in with a food reaction that was systemic in nature, just a few minor reactions. Though by the time 911 arrived, you know, they had gone into having a more severe reaction. So again, once you have a systemic reaction, you're when in doubt, call 911. There's nothing wrong with them responding and then determining that, you know, you don't need to do anything further.
Anybody else have any questions? Does anybody use any of the homeopathic stuff, like what's putting some salve on, or some weed? I don't want to call them weeds, but herbs on bee stings to alleviate some of the pain and swelling?
Onion.
Phil?
Rub an onion on it.
Rub an onion on it. Does it work?
Yes, it does. We had 3 kids stung in our backyard. We took onions out, made sure the stingers were gone, and rubbed that on there. With a couple minutes, the crying was all done.
Again, what I was trying to think of was plantain. I think some people rub plantain on them too, and that's a weed that grows in your lawn.
Hey, Roger.
Yes.
This is Horace.
Hey, Horace.
I learned as a boy, I'm 92 years old now. When I was probably about 8 years old, I learned that ammonia does a good job of counteracting the acid that's in the bee sting. So if you ever try it, find out for yourself. But I've used it in the past, and I know that if you buy stuff from the apiary companies, it'll have ammonia in it.
Okay. Personally, I don't swell up too much, so I don't worry too much about it. But if other people try some of this and let us know, I know it depends on where I get stung. I'll tell you, below the kneecap, I swell up a lot more than my arms or legs or even my face anymore. My face very seldom swells up. If you ever get stung around the eyes, you're going to have to explain how you, the next day at work, why you have a black eye and it's all swelled shut. Because
That's why I always wear a veil. I mean, that's my fear, is to get stung in the face.
Every once in a while I get one
It's
inside my
underneath.
veil.
I have a quick question. You know, when I first did it, I wanted to get stung, but it was kind of like wanting to touch an electric fence. You want to do it, but you don't really want to do it. So I'm glad I get stung now, but I don't go out of my way to get stung. Would you recommend people, like I went from the leather gloves because of my EFB to the nitrite gloves, and I get stung obviously a lot more now. I'm a much better beekeeper because I'm much more careful with the bees. But I know some people that have been doing bees for 1 or 2 years, and I'm sure they're so suited up, they're not getting stung. Is that okay? Or should we be getting stung?
I'm not going to answer that one. That sounds like it needs a medical profession or a lot more schooling than I had.
I'm not sure that I want to answer that either.
I was just tossing it out there. I just always wanted to get a couple stings a year.
I don't want to get in trouble here, but yeah, I don't mind getting stung. But I still haven't figured out how those people can keep bees for 2 or 3 years and claim they've never been stung. I can walk through my bee yard and get stung some afternoon, and most of the girls like me out there. So it's probably not a bad thing if you're going to be a beekeeper to, especially the first time, have somebody standing there and get stung. So
why would somebody want to get stung?
To build your immunity, because sooner or later you're going to get stung.
Because I would get that sausage hand like they showed. I had that happen, my ankle. Now that I get stung, you know, I only get stung maybe 5 to 10 times over a summer, sometimes 5 in 1 week, whatever. Now I get stung on the fingers, and they used to swell up. Now I really don't swell up anymore. It still hurts like the dickens. But obviously if the stinger sits in there a while, or I squeeze it instead of scraping it out, I'll get more venom. But yeah, I used to get hit in the hand and my whole hand would just go sausage hand like that every single time. So
I'll share what my doctor told me. You all can ask your own doctors, but I asked my doctor about it, and she said she thought I'd pretty much just get a bee sting out of the deal. That'd be the benefit, just getting a sting.
Yeah. If you're new to beekeeping, that stinger will stay in you, and the sooner you get it out, the less venom you get and the less pain you'll have. And you don't want to squeeze it, because there's a little sac with muscles still attached to it, squeezing little droplets of venom in you. So you want to scrape that off with like your fingernail, or I usually use a fingernail or something sharp, but scrape that stinger out as soon as you can, and you'll get a lot less venom and a lot less pain. So,
and learn to run.
You don't want to grab the stinger and pull it out, because you'll actually push in more venom.
Yep, you'll give yourself a big dose then. Jamie, you got any suggestions on getting stung?
I just get stung. I've always worn a half jacket. If I get stung in the legs, not a problem. But that time that you think, oh, the bees are calm, you don't wear your veil and you get hit in the face. If I get hit in the face once, my eyes will swell shut for about 2 days. So I always wear the veil at least. But in the legs, I'm used to it, and it doesn't bother me anymore. And the same way with raising queens. By the time queen season really gets underway, the tips of my fingers will be so calloused up and kind of tight where they've got swelled up enough that it doesn't even hurt anymore.
That's about where I'm at, but I do not wear shorts anywhere near my beehives because they get caught in the hair of my legs and I'll get a welt then. But fingers, hands, arms aren't much. Even my face anymore. Never fails. I'll take my veil off and try to get in the truck, and somebody comes out there just madder and mad and sting me anyway. So
And just for the new people out there, just realize this springtime, well, this weather's kind of crappy, but when they're doing nectar, they could care less. You could probably never wear your veil, but then you get one day you get a skunk or you get to fall. It's a whole different animal. So just always wear your veil at
Yeah.
least so that you're protecting your face and eyes.
don't get lulled into thinking about midsummer that you're a really good beekeeper because you don't get stung, because fall will get here and there's less honey to be made and everybody gets defensive. So I cringe when I have new beekeepers tell me that they don't wear a veil and they don't even light their smoker because their bees are so calm. Because what yeah, I can hear somebody laugh in the background, because one day you're going to find out that the bees have a different idea all of a sudden. I see Dave Gallagher popped up here about using the hive tool. Yep, I've used the hive tool to scrape stingers out. They work good at getting a stinger out quick.
Tammy, I don't know. I've never, I have certain hives that are less aggressive. I'm not sure they get used to me. I don't know anybody else. She had a question down there. Can you become a bee whisperer? Maybe is what she's asking.
If you're in around them once in a while, that's a good thing. If you talk to the bee inspectors and people that don't even ever open their hive, their hive inspections by walking in front of the hive and looking to see if anybody's flying out, and nobody's opened it for a year. When they open it up, they're usually pretty grumpy. Right, Jamie?
And I'll tell you this as an inspector. If I come over and I do this to everybody that comes out and all the homeowners, when's the last time you've been in your bees? And if I hear about a week, and it takes me 2 hive tools that I'm shoving in and bending this thing, and the propolis is so thick, and the inner cover is stuck down, and there's burr comb between the inner cover and telescoping top. Those are the bees that when you pop that top, just the snap of it is going to send them off in a flurry. And when I do inspections, I will ask everybody, do you have more defensive or more aggressive bees? And I will. There's some people that I know that are not, let's just say, due diligent or the best beekeepers. And I wear a full suit because I know I'm going to get lit up 15, 20 times in the legs. And that if you get hit with that once, you're done for the day. No matter how early or late in the day, you're done.
So being calm, and if you've had your lid off now and then, it's the big, like Jamie says, the big snap, the sudden jar, that's what usually triggers the bees off more than anything. So if you can get the lid off easy and get things pried apart, it goes so much smoother. But it's just like dropping a box. They're mad then. So nice weather. They don't like rainy days to everybody. I mean, I was trying to catch a swarm on Friday, and it was in between showers, and I opened up a hive that's usually pretty calm. They were not happy to see me, even with smoke. So I was in and out of there quick. I just wanted one frame of brood. Just give me a frame, girls. And I said, well, I guess my beekeeping today's pretty much shot because I gave up. I mean, I only had opened one hive, and to know that the bees are weather, it's a weather thing. So if it's a nice sunny day and you can stand outside in your short sleeve shirt, it's a lot easier working your bees than on a cool day. Because as I tell people, how would you like it on a cold, rainy day like today if somebody come in and taking the roof off your house and start pawing around? It's not fun. So yeah, during the summer when they're gathering nectar to make honey, you can about blow the thing up and they could care less. They got work on their mind. But when they're trying to heat it on cold days like this, you gotta be a little careful.
No, Roger,
So-
like what Marie said down there is, I do warn my daughters and my wife to not go into our garden after I've worked the bees, even if it's 10 in the morning on a spring summer day, just because they will be a little bit, you still have those guard bees shooting around. But if I haven't been in the bees, the summer is kind of a lull. You get a little,
Yeah.
you forget about how they can be if you're.
Well,
And
for
especially,
Marie too, there is a program, the makers of both the AviQ and the epi-pens, you can obtain free epi-pens, like to have on hand, some stock supply of epinephrine in schools for purposes where a child would be stung or for a food allergy reaction. So Marie, if you want to contact me, I can give you some information about that if you'd like.
and Tammy, I know you're new. Don't wear perfume. Some perfumes, cologne. I'm sure there's people. I got a cousin who he's a farmer, but he loves watching me do bees. But I know he has a pheromone that the bees don't like, because we could both be standing there and the bees are going to go after him. I can stand there and they'll go right by me and start buzzing his head. So I know there are people with certain pheromones that they seem to attack more than others.
Go ahead and make sure you eat a banana though before you go into the hive. That usually works really well too.
Because
That was my worry too with being, like I said, I'm pregnant. And so my OB did give me a couple prescriptions for epi-pens, but I'm just worried about like what I'm setting off, that may throw them off, so.
Yep. So that's learn to use your smoker. The smoker's your friend. When I see those people that don't want to use the smoker because they're afraid it upsets the bees too much, well, let me tell you, if you don't use the smoker and the bees get upset, they're going to be mad for a long time. So a little bit of smoke goes a long ways in helping too.
With the smoker is,
Yep.
can you ever over smoke them to where they get more aggressive because you're smoking them?
Probably can, but it doesn't take much smoke to calm them down. And just drift it, even before you open the lid, puff it up underneath the cover and in the front entranceway. Give them a couple puffs of smoke. The hard part when you're a brand new beekeeper is keeping your smoker lit. And everybody on here, there's 34 people here, and all 30, Jamie's up there giggling. Everybody has trouble keeping their smokers lit very long. So, and most people, that's the new people thing. How do you keep your smoker lit? So you're going to have more trouble making smoke than giving them probably too much.
Wood pellets.
I've used wood pellets. You still got to get the wood pellets burning. And when we have 3 rainy days, it seems like I can't even get paper to burn in my smoker for a while.
Yeah, it takes a minute to get the pellet started, but once I do, I can run through a 12-hour day of inspections, and I throw a handful in every couple, 2 or 3 hours, and it'll burn all day long.
I've had some smoke come out 3 hours after I started, and it's still those wood pellets burning in there. Yep. Thanks, Sonny.
So Tammy, the one thing that I do is I do what Roger said. I do a little smoke under the top while I'm kind of getting oriented. Then I usually break my boxes off. I'll take the top box off, and then I'll go work the next box. But I just do a quick spray of smoke on top of each box. They kind of rush down. I can get through at least most of the frames before they decide to come back up, and I just work through. But I do think there's a point where if you have a mean hive, it doesn't matter how much smoke you're going to put on it, they're going to come for you. But I do think they get agitated after a little bit if you just keep heavy smoking them. But just a couple puffs to get them off the top of the frame so you can grab them, inspect them, move that box out of the way, or however you're going to do it.
And if you leave the hive open too long, they'll get antsy
and it's cold,
too.
it's rainy. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you
Not a
for
problem.
doing this for us.
Glad to help.
See, we got some thumbs up. Everybody can give you the reaction down here. We can give you clap. Thank you.
Sorry for talking so long.
It's all right. If nobody else has anything, we'll kind of wrap this up. I'm sure Jamie's got 3 other presentations and
No,
10
we're good.
emails to write yet tonight.
And if you guys want to watch some more, go on YouTube's channel and type in Ohio State Beekeepers Association, and there's a lot more videos on that, and a few more that are going to be uploaded tonight. So,
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Therese, for
yeah, thank you very
doing
much,
your
Teresa.
presentation. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you.
So
Thank
thanks,
you.
everyone. Take care.